Happy to welcome you all to the April edition of the Rancho Bernardo Historical Society Speaker Series. My name is Vincent Rossi. I'm the coordinator of the series. Very happy to welcome such a nice crowd. Really appreciate your loyalty and your interest in history. And let me begin with the usual warning to please turn off or silence cell phones, and remind you of our next program, which will be May 11th, when we will welcome Mr. Richard Carrico, who's been a popular speaker here before. He will be speaking about his new book, Monsters on the Loose, the true story of 3 unsolved murders in Prohibition-era San Diego. So mark that down on the calendars. Today's program, we're happy to welcome Alexander Bevil, a retired state parks historian for California State Parks, an award-winning writer, researcher, and speaker who's devoted his life to writing and speaking about Southern California's cultural, architectural, and military history. Among other things, he's a past president and board member of the Congress of History of San Diego and Imperial Counties, as well as a former board member of San Diego's Save Our Heritage organization, SOHO. They do a lot of good work to preserve our history. He's a former board member of SOHO, and he's also been honored several times by SOHO with its People in Preservation Award for his work. He's also received awards for a number of articles for the San Diego History Center's Journal of San Diego History. He's a great historical and detective, and we appreciate his work. And today he's going to be talking about the search for Calle, Judeo, Old Town San Diego State Historic Park's Forgotten Street of Pioneer Jewish Merchants. So I'm very happy to welcome Alexander Bevil.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. Are there any people of the Jewish persuasion in the audience? Okay. I apologize for butchering any Hebrew words, so you'll understand why. I'm doing my best. Latin, okay. Hebrew, that's okay. Now, you might ask yourself, what right do I, as a Gentile, have to tell the story of San Diego's pioneer Jewish merchants? Well, that about sums it up. It also helped me retired Caltrans State Parks historian with 20 years experience and I'd say one to 2 full years researching this, but I've been involved in it since about 2012. Now, let's talk about the historical background. You guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Every once in a while I'll have to turn to look. I need to look at my notes. In 1856, the editor of the local San Diego Herald newspaper referred to Old Town San Diego's Jewish merchants as among its men of enterprise. Who were Old Town's pioneer Jewish men and women of enterprise? There were about 12 to 14 German Jewish immigrant entrepreneurs out of a total population of about 400 who chose to establish homes and businesses in Old Town San Diego during the 1850s. Historically associated with an exodus of some 150,000 German-speaking European Jews to the golden land of America between 1848 and 1880. It was the second wave of some 3.5 million Jews who immigrated to the United States between the 17th and early 20th centuries. Former subjects of independent German-speaking kingdoms or principalities like Prussia, Bavaria, or Hanover, they had left in response to crop failures, wars, social unrest, revolutions, repressed racial laws, and overall lack of economic opportunities. Who were Old Town's pioneer Jewish men and women of enterprise? They were from a group of relatively young, about 32 years of age, itinerant peddlers and traders who who initially sold goods door to door with the ultimate goal of setting up a permanent shop in Newtown. Their retail stores revolutionized the way Americans and San Diegans in particular purchase consumer goods. Whoops. There we go. They were naturalized American citizens, and they, along with their wives, children, and extended families, would form the core of a Western town's Jewish merchant community. Here's a photograph of Robert Lazar Miller with his grandson at the Denver Stockyards in 1932. And I looked at him and I go, he's a regular hop-along Catskill. When did they initially come to San Diego? Roughly between 1850 and 1860. Why did they come to San Diego? Old Town San Diego is Jewish, along with their neighboring Gentile, non-Jewish merchants, saw an opportunity to profit from San Diego's economic transition from an agrarian, ranching-based Mexican pueblo into a market-driven American frontier town after the Mexican-American War. It was a stopover for would-be Argonauts traveling westward along the Gila Trail or north from Baja California on their way up to the California gold fields. It was a harbor for securing passage on sail or steamships up the coast to San Francisco, and from there you go up to the gold fields. Or you can travel via horseback, wagon, or stage along El Camino Real. It was also the port of call for passenger and cargo ships sailing up from Mexico, Latin America, or northeast from the Hawaiian Islands. Back in that day, they were referred to as the Sandwich Islands. Why did they gravitate to Old Town? Old Town was already established as a Mexican pueblo in 1821 with about 100 adobe-built and wood-frame homes clustered around the Central Plaza. How many of you have been to Old Town State Park? Good. Thank you. It was a traditional seat of municipal and county administration, courts, etc. since that time. It was commercial, receiving and shipping center for goods and services arriving by sea to local and outlying rural settlements. The local Hispanic population were willing to sell or lease their pre-existing adobe homes or vacant lots to newly arrived Anglo-American or European merchants. The disadvantage, deepwater piers were either 4 miles to the south at Newtown, San Diego, or 5 miles to the southwest on the far side of San Diego Bay at La Playa on Point Loma's leeward side. Bottom line, people were attracted by the perennial dream that either old or new San Diego would become the western terminus of the Southern Transcontinental Railroad from Texas. It would transform the harbor into a major West Coast entrepot with trade links across the Pacific Ocean. And if you know anything about the history of San Diego, it's basically the history of false promises. God bless the Navy. If it wasn't from the Navy, there'd be no San Diego. How did Old Town's Gentile merchants come to regard these foreign Jewish newcomers? Most immigrant Jews often had to struggle to maintain their religious and cultural traditions amongst some wary Gentiles who were not sure if they were, are you German, are you Jews, or are you fellow Americans? However, despite some setbacks, and I'll talk about them, Old Town's Gentile merchants soon realized that the Jews shared the same competitive nature, materialistic business values, respect for property, rights, law and order, as well as individual freedom and responsibility for personal achievement as their own. Plus, they were white. They decided that a mutual, if cautious, climate of tolerance and cooperation would benefit theirs as well as their Jewish neighbors' commercial enterprises. Old Town's pioneer Jewish merchants proved to be an integral part of the town's economic, political, and social growth while maintaining a strong dedication to their own religious beliefs and sense of community. Where was the largest concentration of Old Town San Diego State Historic Park's pioneer Jewish-owned commercial enterprises? Right along Calle, Judeo. There was, it bisected that block. There also was a dirt lane connecting the Calle Judeo to the Central Plaza and another one to Lawn Street. historic location of Calle Judeo. After 1850, as more and more Jewish immigrant merchants began leasing or buying older adobe homes and repurposing them into various business enterprises, locals then referred to it as Judea Street or Calle Judeo, the street of the Jews in Spanish. It was also known informally as Rose or Manasseh streets after pioneer Jewish merchants Louis Rose and Joseph S. Manasseh, who operated a majority of stores on either side of the lane. And we'll learn more about that. And it never was a dedicated street. Here's what it looks like today. Next time you're down at Old Town San Diego, the Casa de Reyes courtyard, just take a peek, and you're standing on a Calle Judeo. Where along Calle Judeo were these Jewish enterprises located? Oh yeah. It's about, 15 right there. We're going to go through them. Tomorrow I'm leading a tour at Old Town, but unfortunately it's sold out. We're hoping that Old Town will continue these and at least have a booklet and a map so you can walk along these sites. David Wallach's store number 1 was located right at 1 and Wallace Street. And at the time, it was known as, Wallace was known as Washington Street. It was a single-story adobe house where 38-year-old Prussian-born David, or Daniel Wallach, operated his first general merchandise store in Old Town prior to 1868. A close friend of local merchants Joseph S. Manasseh and Marcus Schiller, Wallach acted as an agent and property manager for the company. Heyman Solomon Restaurant, another Prussian Jew, 34-year-old Heyman Solomon, and his 24-year-old Ohio-born wife Emma operated a restaurant on the ground floor and was 2-story adobe from 1869 to 1872. It was the first, reportedly, the first restaurant in San Diego to make and serve flavored ice cream. Yeah. The J.S. Manasseh Company store in the Moreno property. From March 1864, this 2-story wooden false front store and later addition were built on the site of the former Casa de Marron by Isaac Goldman, J.S. Manasseh and Company. Typical of most local commercial enterprises at this time, it carries to sell food, sugar, coffee, salt, flour, drinks, tobacco, canned goods, clothing, and hardware. That was a packed store. Along with wine, liquors, and cigars. Spelled S-E-G-A-R-S. Cigars. J.S. Manasseh and Company in the Casa de Reyes Ibanez. In 1853, 22-year-old Prussian Jew Joseph S. Manasseh and his 29-year-old older brother Hyman and their 16-year-old cousin Moses leased space in this adobe for a dry goods store. 3 years later, it would become the first store managed by the J.S. Manasseh Company. One of the most successful in San Diego, from 1856 to 1872, it managed a series of 7 separate markets in Old Town. Who was Joseph Samuel Manasseh? Like most Western American male Jewish immigrants, Joseph Samuel Manasseh integrated himself into his adopted town's economic, political, and religious institutions. Among these, he served as county clerk, member of the board of supervisors, as well as treasurer, and later president of the board of town trustees. Like other Jewish merchants, he was a leading member of the local Masonic lodge. A family man, Manasseh had married his brother Hyman's divorced wife, Hannah, and they only had one daughter, Salita. Both he and his partner, Marcus Schiller, sponsored many Purim festivals. Did I get that right? Purim? Listen up.
Purim.
Like other Old Town Jewish merchants, by 1870, Manasseh was among the first to relocate south to New San Diego. Despite his successes, and 9 years after the partnership's 1888 dissolution, he died practically penniless in 1897, buried at the old Jewish cemetery about 1.5 miles southwest of Old Town. He was later reinterred at the newer Home of Peace Jewish Cemetery in southeastern San Diego. Who was Martin Schiller? Another immigrant Russian, 32-year-old Marcus Schiller, arrived in San Diego in 1856 from San Francisco. He too became involved in local commercial, political, and religious institutions, serving the local militia, Masonic Lodge, Board of City Trustees. Besides speculating in real estate and railroad development, he contributed generously to the building of the first telegraph line into San Diego. Like Manasseh, Schiller was active in his faith, having helped organize the local Jewish Benevolent Association and guiding the tradition of Adav Yesharon, the community of the upright, into the modern Temple Beth Israel, serving as its president from 1888 to his death in 1904. Due to an economic downturn, Schiller also died poor, but was well remembered by his Masonic brothers during his burial at the Home of Peace. Let's talk about the Jewish operating enterprise in the Casa de Ruiz. Beginning in 1853, a series of local Jewish merchants, J.S. Manasseh and Company, Max Pollack, and Martin Trimmer, subleased the former Ruiz Adobe before it became the Gentile-owned Lloyd and Kerr Saloon. Between 1857 and 1859, Louis Rose expanded the nearby commercial house to include the saloon and adjacent old livery stable. Around 1860, Joseph and 19-year-old Benjamin Manasseh re-leased the property. Louis Rose operated a commercial house in the Casa de Maria de los Reyes Ibanes. One of Louis Rose's first commercial properties, he leased this 1823 built two-room adobe in 1850, converting it into a boarding house while he went to develop other properties. He placed it under the management of 30-year-old German Jew Edward Schneider, who had been struggling financially after his nearby store's roof collapsed. Around 1860, J.S. Manasseh and Company leased the property, which now included grocery and feed store and an adjacent horse corral and livery. So Louis Rose residence number 1 in the Casa de Rocha. Another Rose property reportedly was his first residence while developing and managing nearby properties along Calle, Judeo from 1850 to 1859. While living here, he would also have been involved in various local enterprises, as well as civic and fraternal positions of leadership, such as exalted member of the local Masonic Lodge. From 1859 to 1869, J.S. Manasseh and Company acquired and used the Adobe house as their business office. At some point in its history, it was converted into a feed store in association with an adjacent corral and livery. Who was Louis Rose? One of Old Town's most active entrepreneurs, besides operating a series of general stores, San Diego's, quote, first Jew, was actually involved in ranching, saddle making, and brick making, and a failed attempt to make and sell dry seaweed stuffed mattresses. Don't laugh. The latter isn't as far-fetched as it seems. Born near the northern coast of Lower Saxony, he would have been familiar with local upholsterers stuffing mattresses with a variety of dry sea sedge. He was also active with other merchants in their efforts to get a railroad to San Diego, especially through his deep-water wharf at Roseville on Point Loma. The Casa de Pico stores. Historically located in the Casa de Pico, it was a mid-19th century mini-mall. Between 1853 until severely damaged by an 1862 earthquake, this long, linear, single-story adobe contained stores run by, again, Louis Rose, Jacob A. Goldman, his brother-in-law Louis Strauss, and J.S. Manasseh and Company. Goldman sold his entire half-interest in La Tienda Nueva, a new store, to his brother Solomon, who operated from 1855 to 1858. In addition to dry goods and clothing, after Manasseh Company took over the store in 1858, it also carried mining tools and hardware. Louis Rose operated a dram and later a butcher shop in the Casa de Serrano. In August 16, 1853, Louis Rose acquired a dram shop in the former Casa de Serrano, an informal bar that served shots of liquor. It had been notorious for frequent complaints of disorderly conduct by low classes of town and country people. In 1866, after it had been repurposed into a meat market by a previous owner, Rose reacquired the property, and I speculated that since Rose was Jewish, This might have been San Diego's second kosher meat market. I mean, they had to, someone had to. I mean, there was a small population of practicing Jews. Here's the location of, it's right on Juan Street. The La Tienda General in the Casa de Yorba. In 1851, partners Louis A. Franklin and Thomas Whaley leased this adobe residence from Juan Machado. Prior to 1854, locals referred to the dirt lane between the house as Calle de Panaderia de Juan Machado, the street of the bakery of Juan Machado. They opened La Tienda, California, a California store. Inside, shoppers could buy, I'll quote this from the newspaper ad, fancy and domestic dry goods, provisions, small wares, crockery and glassware, hardware, ironmongery, agricultural implements, ready-made clothing, shoes, hats, and boots, and of course, liquors. It had a unique solution to restrictive California blue laws. These were statewide 1861 legislation that closed all businesses on Sundays. It was a punitive reaction against Jewish merchants closing their shops on Saturdays in observance of their religious traditions, but not Sundays. With their shops closed on Saturdays in observance of the Sabbath, the law deprived observant Jews of 2 business days. Creative solution? Whaley, a Christian, would mind the store on Saturdays. His Jewish partner Franklin would operate on Sundays. Problem solved. Yes, Manasseh had another store in the Casa de Maron. Not the Casa de Maron. The Casa de Maron. Yes, I am Italian. In 1845, Don Juan Bandini and Joseph Reiner took over the property's mortgage. Reiner, a Hungarian, may not have been Jewish, especially after we talk about the forthcoming San Diego incident. After Reiner became sole owner, he returned it to Felipa Osuna de Maron in 1858. She sold it to, guess who? J.S. Manasseh and Company. In December 1864, it was not known if the latter converted it into a general store or just as a ongoing acquisition of additional parcels along Calle Judeo. Isaac Goldman had a dry goods store in the Casa de Maron Osuna. To March 1854 and 1870, Joseph Reiner, Isaac Goldman, Louis Rose, and J.S. Manasseh and Company leased space in this L-shaped single-story adobe. German-born Goldman was the only one on record on operating a dry goods store from 1855 until he sold it to, guess who? J.S. Manasseh Company in 1868. Same Market Butcher Shop. This single-story wood frame structure originally contained Gentile William Leam's Butcher Shop. In August 1852, Louis Rose purchased and remained at the City Market, possibly San Diego's first kosher butcher shop. In July 1869, he sold it to Haman Solomon, who incorporated into the adjacent restaurant we talked about earlier. There were 12 Jewish-owned enterprises located outside of Calle Judeo. And good. Although it's not within Calle Judeo, how can we not talk about it? These are other business along the periphery. We'll start with the Hyman Manasseh store in the Casa de Bangini. In 1853, the story starts getting good. 22-year-old Hyman Manasseh originally partnered with his cousin Moses in a dry goods store. In 1855, he worked as an assistant manager, then manager of the store in the Casa de Bangini. Eventually becoming a successful merchant and stock rancher, Manasseh gave back to his adopted community through his public service and charitable work. However, after driving a herd of cattle to the Arizona Territory in 1864, in order to help organize the Colorado River Farming and Stock Raising Association, Haman, in debt to J.S. Manasseh and Company, stayed there, abandoning his 27-year-old wife, Hannah. After partnering with Jewish merchant Michael Goldwater, formerly Goldwasser, the future Arizona Senator Barry M. Goldwater's grandfather. Oh, not Goldwater. In Wickenburg, Arizona, in a general merchandise store. Hyman opened a branch store in Phoenix, where on April 20th, 1875, an irate customer shot and killed Hyman, allegedly in self-defense, during an argument over the price of barley. Yeah, I know. What a way to die. Who was Hannah Manasseh? Born in Prussian-occupied Poland in 1837, Hannah, Marcus Schiller's younger sister, had married Hyman Manasseh on June 28, 1863. Shortly after the wedding, Hyman relocated to Arizona without her, leaving her destitute. 3 years later, having survived on her brother Marcus's financial support, Hannah sued Hyman for divorce, claiming desertion, lack of financial support, and public humiliation. However, as part of the October 12, 1866 divorce settlement, Hannah, who did not receive any alimony or any financial remuneration, explicitly had to pay Hyman $2,500, which was paid off by her brother Marcus. I have copies to prove it. What a deal, yeah. He was fine. Just pay it. And initially he wanted $5,000. I know, what a putz. After her acrimonious divorce, Hannah rebounded. Perhaps to get even, on February 13, 1867, she married, guess who? Hyman's brother Joseph. An independent woman of means, she owned stock in a local speculative railroad. She was a landowner. She owned a ranch, one of the first women to have a registered cattle brand in the county, that owned property in Old Town in Roseville. She even sued her new husband Joseph under an 1811 Spanish and 1850 California law to ensure that he had no claim on her assets. Get your hands off my assets, buddy. After her death in 1913, she was buried at the Home of Peace Cemetery. Who was Selita Manasseh? The only child of Joseph and Hannah Manasseh. She was born in Old Town in 1868. She later taught Sundays at Temple Beth Israel in downtown. Because of her wealthy parents' place in the community, she was invited to and participate in various social and charitable activities. Among these, in particular, was the occasional Feast of Purim Ball, where dancing was kept up until 4 a.m. When she wasn't partying, she worked as a bookkeeper at Adolph Levi's Hat and Transfer Company from 1901 to 1919, after she became an information clerk for the San Diego Chamber of Commerce. She passed away on March 19, 1924 at 56. She was interred next to her parents at the Home of Peace Cemetery. Solomon Goldman store in the Fitch building. In 1848, retired sea captain Henry Delano Fitch erected this 2-story L-shaped adobe on the corner of Calhoun and Washington, now Wallace Streets. A combination residence and market, Fitch operated a general merchandising store, the first built in operation in Old Town at the time, on the ground floor. After Fitch died the following year, Josefa Carrillo de Fitch continued to operate the store. In 1854, she leased it to a successive enterprises, worked in Chris Meat Market, Meat and Vegetable Market, the Solomon Goldman Store, and J.A. Meyer's Universal Variety Store. Of the three, only Goldman has been recognized as one of Old Town's pioneer Jewish merchants. Louis Strauss drive-in store residence. In 1853, 28-year-old Bavarian Jew Louis Strauss operated a general and merchandise store on the corner of Washington and Juan Streets. He and his 18-year-old wife, Leonora, and their 2 children lived in a separate residence behind the store. While operating his business, Strauss served his adopted community as a public coroner and a founding member of the proposed San Diego and Gila Railroad. Although Louis sold ready-to-wear clothing in the store, he did not carry any of his half-brother Levi's famous riveted jeans. That's Strauss. Because Louis had closed his shop and moved to San Francisco 30 years prior to their 1873 introduction. Louis died a wealthy man in 1881. Louis Rose's second residence in the Robinson Rose building. In the 61-year-old Louis Rose purchased this 1853 built combination commercial building with an overhead living quarters from Judge James W. Robinson's widow. The buildings associated with his many business ventures, real estate, railroad speculation, local government, until he relocated to Roseville around 1884. A man of faith, he had a strong association with local Jewish history in this building. For example, June 20th, 1861, Rose was instrumental in organizing Dath Shalom, San Diego's first Jewish congregation. Rose also helped set up the congregation's Hebrew Benevolent Society. On January 8, 1870, Rose gifted 5 acres of land to the society for a cemetery, located about a mile and a half southwest of Old Town. San Diego's first Jewish cemetery served the local Jewish community till the opening of the Home of Peace in 1892. It is was situated on high ground overlooking the sandy plain between Old Town and the northeast corner of the Point Loma Massif. The building had a strong association with Rose's contribution to local Jewish history. He hosted and officiated as a lay rabbi in the house during 1872's High Holy Day services. It was reconstructed by State Parks in 1989. The restored Robinson Rose building's door frame contains a mezuzah, a small metal and glass cylinder containing a parchment roll with an inscribed prayer. It would have reminded Rose, his family, and fellow Jewish visitors of his faith. A family man, he and his wife Matilda had only one child, Henrietta. Rose died in 1888 and was buried at the First Jewish Cemetery. His remains, like those of other pioneer Jews buried there, were exhumed and reburied at the Home of Peace Cemetery. Erected in 1857 on the site of the former Hilario Ponciano adobe from 1868 to 1870, 34-year-old Russian Jew Martin Trimmer co-managed the 2-story American Hotel, which contained a restaurant, post office, billiard and card rooms, bowling saloon, and a livery stable in the rear yard. Trimmer and his family lived in a small house a block away across Mason Street. Here's a historic shot of the gang up there on the, hopefully it's met the building codes.
Low ceilings.
Yeah. And it was reconstructed by State Parks around 1985. Franklin House. In 1856, Louis A. and his brother Maurice Franklin purchased and remodeled the former 2-story Exchange Hotel into the 3-story Franklin House. On the new brick ground floor, Louis ran the relocated La Tienda, California, and later operated a law office, while older brother Maurice ran a pharmacy. They leased the remaining rooms to a variety of professional businesses. The rear yard contained an 1869 addition with corrals and stables for a stage line that shuttled paying guests to and from the steamship wharves at New San Diego or the Playa. Who were the Franklin brothers? Devout Jews? On October 9, 1851, English-born Louis Franklin, his grandfather had been a rabbi in Poland, had hosted the town's first Rosh Hashanah services in his home. The Franklins honored the blue laws and closed the hotel businesses on weekends. What was the San Diego incident? October 1859, during Rosh Hashanah services in one of Franklin House's rooms, Deputy Sheriff Joseph Winder and a posse forcibly removed Moses and Manasseh from Minna, a quorum required for traditional Jewish worship, to serve as a witness in a criminal assault trial. An enraged Louis A. Franklin wrote numerous letters to American Jewish newspapers and religious leaders about the San Diego incident as a deliberate violation of Manasseh and his fellow congregants' freedom of religion. A deeply religious man, Moses had brought San Diego County's first Torah, the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible, to the native Prussia. In the courtroom, Moses defiantly sat silent in the witness chair until sundown. And Moses, in order to attend this, had schlepped all the way down from his ranch in San Pasqual. So he was unduly pissed. He sat silent in the witness chair until sundown, after which he willingly gave witness to the alleged crime. These two brothers did not get along. They ended their partnership on March 4, 1858, after which Maurice relocated his business and family to San Bernardino. In debt to J.S. Manasseh and Company, in 1862, Lewis lost the property to foreclosure. He eventually returned to England, where he died at age 59. Brother Maurice and his sister-in-law Victoria died in San Bernardino at 57 and 23 years of age, respectively. Who is Victoria Franklin? Prominent Manchester Polish-Jewish family on June 28, 1838. Victoria Jacobs and her parents, Mark Israel and Hannah Jacobs, settled in San Diego in 51, where her father opened up a store. Her father performed her marriage to Maurice Franklin, who was way older than she was, on March 31, 1857. Because her brother-in-law constantly badgered her, she and her newborn son Abraham rarely left their room in the Franklin house. This helped Maurice's decision to relocate his family to live near Victoria's family in San Bernardino. While there she gave birth to a second son, Salim, in 1859. Tragically, she and her third son died during childbirth in 1861. She was only 23 years old. However, Victoria's surviving diary of the San Diego girl, 1856, gives a valuable insight of a young Jewish girl living in a frontier western town where, she wrote, people of different backgrounds lived and worked together in apparent harmony. On April 20, 1872, a fire broke out in the nearby courthouse building and it spread to the adjacent Colorado House and the Franklin House, burning all to the ground. The site of the Franklin House remains vacant today. Manasseh had a store in the Colorado House. 1866, J.S. Manasseh and Company purchased this building, which Cave House had erected 15 years earlier as a Colorado House. Like the neighboring Franklin House, this twin-up-story wood frame false front building served as a hotel, of which Haman Manasseh had been a resident. It had a dining, saloon, and bar, a billiard parlor, post office, courtroom, etc., etc. It was destroyed in 1875. The site remained vacant until Caltrans State Parks rebuilt it in 1992. Manasseh and Company had a store in the former San Diego Courthouse. This building, in 1870, Manasseh had acquired the former 1851 Villa Courthouse and converted it into a general store. The company placed Marcus Schiller's 19-year-old nephew Rudolph as store manager. What could possibly go wrong? I'll tell you, on April 20th, 1872, sparks from the store's poorly insulated stovepipe reportedly started a fire in the roof's crawl space. Aided by strong winds and a non-working volunteer fire pump, the fire spread and destroyed the courthouse and an additional 5 buildings on San Diego Avenue. Colorado House, Franklin House, Racine Laramie Tobacco Shop, and the Casa de Juan Rodriguez, J.H. Church Saloon, May's Saddle and Harness Shop, and seriously damaged the nearby David Wallach store, resulting in a loss of an estimated $12,000 worth of merchandise, which today would be worth about $316,000. Oof. Luckily, the fire did not spread throughout the town. Neither Manasseh or Schiller chose to rebuild. Like other old-timers, they had lost faith in Old Town as a commercial center. On September 14, 1870, the U.S. Postal Service announced that old and new San Diego would now be referred to as North San Diego and San Diego, respectively. This reflects the exodus of businesses and people from Old Town south to the former New Town, in anticipation of this being a terminus of another promised continental railroad. Further reducing Old Town's importance as it slipped into history and was virtually forgotten. State Parks rebuilt the courthouse sometime in 1992. David Wallach's store, between 1869 and 72, Wallach either built, bought, or relocated the small one-story wood frame false front building facing San Diego Avenue on its western corner of Mason Street. He may have led his 65-year-old father-in-law here to operate a grocery store while he opened another market in New Town, San Diego. Wallace reportedly relocated to his store near Wallace and Calhoun Streets after the fire. He seems to have sold both the old and New Town stores that were relocated to Northern California prior to 1890. Jacob Solomon's house. 1857, 34-year-old Polish-Russian Solomon Goldman erected and lived in his with the 23-year-old German-born wife Lena in this modest white gold trim house until 1858 when he sold it to his brother Jacob. Jacob later leased the house to Dr. David Bancroft Hoffman before selling it to Andrew Chris. In the early 1860s, Solomon had been one of several merchants, Jew and Gentile, who lobbied for a rail or wagon road extending from San Diego to the desert, no doubt towards his respective copper mine holdings in Arizona. Solomon may have hit hard times in 1874 when liens were placed against two of his Old Town properties. He appears to have relocated to Tulare County in 1869. Unfortunately, the failure of a local rail venture up there cost him dearly. He tried to recover by running a grocery store in San Francisco. He was dead in 1902. His wife Lena soon followed him in death in 1905. David Wallach had a house at this location. Louis Rose had acquired this property in a sheriff's sale for back taxes in October 1855. It's not clear if Rose or Wallach, who had purchased the property in April '69, built his 2.5-story house. 43-year-old Wallach and his recently married 20-year-old wife Nina and their family lived in the house while he managed his 2 stores until approximately 1890, when he relocated his family to Northern California. On July 5th, 1957, their names were aposthumously engraved in a bronze memorial plaque at San Francisco's Temple Beth Israel in recognition of their pioneering work. Martin Trimmer acquired the property in September 1869. He was already involved in managing the nearby American Hotel. He may have utilized it as his private residence rather than investment property. Sometime around 1880, Trimmer, his Mexican-born wife Juana, and their 6 children relocated to a ranch in the Descanso area, where he resumed his previous trade as a harness maker. While the 1872 fire did not reach his house, it, along with the neighboring Solomon and Wallach houses, no longer exist, having been replaced by non-historic concessionaire or hospital buildings sometime after 1968. Historic note, across the street on the southwest corner of Twigs and San Diego Avenue stood the store or residence of the Hannah Jacobs family. What was the legacy of Old Town's Jewish men and women of enterprise? They represent the thousands of primarily German-speaking immigrant and European Jews who could be found in similar mid-19th century towns throughout the American West. Their determination to integrate into the town's established economic, civic, and fraternal communities while struggling to maintain their cultural and religious identities helped lay the foundations for modern San Diego. This presentation is consistent with the following. Calvert State Park's mission statement to provide for the inspiration and education of the people of California by helping to preserve and protect its most valued cultural resources. It is consistent with the 1991 Resource Interpretation and Management Plan, which should be reviewed and revised periodically whenever new archaeological or historical information like this becomes available so that the park can be seen to be as historically accurate and authentic as possible. In 2001, Old Town San Diego State Historic Park Relevancy and History Project stated that it seeks to integrate the town's established economic, civic, and fraternal communities while struggling to maintain their old cultural and religious identities. In 2005, the Old Town San Diego State Historic Park Strategic Plan for Transportation asked to re-examine, revise, and incorporate new empirical data about particular sites and the individuals associated with their historical evolution. Up until about a year ago, the majority of the Old Town staff knew nothing. All I knew of that Louis Rose was a Jew. And he was in this building, the Rose Robinson. That was it. Oh, there might have been some other shops, but it's also consistent. It provides educational and recreational enrichment opportunities, guidance for potential park staff and their volunteer opportunities, and the preservation of community histories and cultural resources. Conclusion. I believe that this lecture has fulfilled most of the above aspects by giving you all a better understanding of a surprisingly deep but relatively untold story of the park's historic pioneer Jewish merchant community, the descendants of which continue to contribute to modern San Diego's economic, cultural, and religious heritage. I also hope to continue my research, which will be contained into an updated report on Old Town's pioneer Jewish men and women of enterprise for California state parks. I have consistently given reports while as a state park historian to the San Diego Coast District. And when I go and visit them and say, hey, you have a copy of my 2020 report on pioneer Jews? And so I refer, and I'll go on record as saying I refer to Old Town State Park as the black hole of California State Parks. We send them stuff and it just disappears. I am personally going to give them a copy of my report and send them a digital copy. And they seem pretty enthused about all this. Things kind of went hot and cold. Oh, yeah. So it's up to you guys when you go visit Old Town State Park and say, hey, I understand there are a bunch of Jewish run stores here. Do you have any information about that? And then I go, oh yeah, it's right here. We have a booklet that was produced by SOPO that's a self-guided tour. So fingers crossed. If not, you say, why isn't there any more information? I listened to a really marvelous lecture by this retired state park historian who showed us at least 24 sites in Old Town State Park that were run and operated by San Diego's pioneer Jewish community. Why isn't there any more information about that? So, folks. So I highly recommend, and next time you go to Old Town, have this knowledge with you. I think this will be available for viewing at the museum. Study it. And I'm hoping that there will be the booklets and a map, like the maps you saw on my slide here, numbered. You can go to each site and say, okay, right here was the so-and-so store. Oh, they had ice cream here. And here's the such and such. Oh, this might have been the first kosher meat market in San Diego County. And you get a feeling of a sense of place. Again, it's not just cerveza and tacos. It's more than that. And wouldn't it be magnificent that they were able to reconstruct these buildings and operate them as such, and not just T-shirts and trinkets, but actually, when you do go down to Old Town State Park, go and visit the Rust store and the Casa Alvarado next to it. They're pretty much the best interpretive stores during the historic period, 1850 to 1872, in Old Town State Park. You get a feel. Now, granted, they might be selling the exact same stuff, but they'll be selling things like canned this, pickled this, candies, root beer, sarsaparilla, Bavarian pretzels, shirts, dresses, candles, whatever, as opposed to T-shirts. I got class there at Old Town. Whatever. Yeah, see, I have a love-hate relationship with Old Town. And I hope I help change that for you all. Anyway, thank you very much. You made it time. Any questions? Oh, yeah.
Manasseh's name just came up over and over and over.
Yeah.
And he certainly was a big player.
Yep.
But then you said he died in such extreme debt.
Yeah.
His funeral was a problem.
Well, the Masons took care of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what happened to his money?
Well, he was a generous man. I think the common term is a soft touch. And he invested in Newtown, and like everything, in 1873 there was a nationwide depression, and a lot of people lost a lot of money. They rebounded in 1888, the big boom, the building boom. Yeah. But then by 1893 there was another depression. So it just.
And when did he die? When did Manasseh die?
I don't know. Manasseh. Ask me more questions and I'll say
thought you
I just wrote it, I didn't memorize it.
I just wondered if it had anything to do with the 1888 bust, you know, the...
Possibly. Let me find it.
Might be nice.
It was speculated that he died of a broken heart. Yeah, around the, he barely made it to the boom of the late 1880s, and then died peacefully in his sleep.
Did he kill himself?
And something that was also...
We don't know. No one's talking. You don't really want to bring that to the forefront. Yes, ma'am.
My question concerns the dissolution of this whole community. It appeared that you said something about there was actually a movement to move everybody out of Old Town, or tell me a little bit more about how everything is kind of stopped.
Remember what I said, that here's Old Town, where's the water?
Yeah. So,
How do you get goods to market back in the 1850s? By boat. By boat. Yeah, they're hoping for railroad, but they almost got a railroad in the 1850s. But what happened in 1861? Civil War. So, and prior to that, a certain faction in Congress said, do we really want to fund a railroad connecting the South to the Pacific Ocean? So in 1869, Horton he bought a big chunk of land, developed Horton's Addition, built a wharf, a deep water wharf. So as soon as you got a deep water wharf, you got ships. And the ships, instead of saying, what? I don't want to spend money schlepping goods all the way in the middle of nowhere in Old Town. We've got banks, we've got stores, now we got churches, we've got warehouses right down, economy of scale. It costs to ship stuff up here, and the population is now saying, I can make more money down here than I can up here. So all these merchants, these pioneer merchants in the second generation, are coming down. They know where the money lies. So that's where Newtown becomes just plain old San Diego. Old Town is either referred to as Old Town or North San Diego after the post office changes it. And then Louis is trying to say, here's Old Town. Here's the bay. No, here's the bay. Here's Point Loma. He's trying to build Roseville over here. He builds a wharf. He's expecting the railroad to actually come around to Roseville. The logic is at Point Loma, on that side of Point Loma, that's where the deep water is. That had been a deep water port since the Spanish days. Any further inland, you're going to run into mud. So that's why. They follow money. Anything else, real quick? Yes, sir.
Presumably this was a Reformed Jewish community? Was there
It was, from my good friends and source information, the Schwartzes, it was Orthodox and then became Reformed.
And were the marriages organized or selected? I mean, part of the tradition.
That's a good. Well, look at Victoria. She married in her teens.
That's why.
To a guy who was 40-something.
That's why it sounds like that.
Yeah, it's basically
Arranged marriage.
it's you get the pick of the litter. It's he had business. He was a pharmacist. I think he had a year of medical training. So he was a pharmacist. So he had a business. He had an established business. So did his brother. And so she thought, her family thought she married well. So look at Hannah. She was 29, and when she married that bum, he skipped, and he just went to Arizona, you know, and karma is karma, and got shot in the back. So that'll teach you. Don't leave your 29-year-old wife alone and get destitute in San Diego.
So was there a synagogue, you know?
The synagogue did not organize as such until 1889. Became Temple Beth Israel. The community, the congregation, began in 1861, but they would meet at various homes and have their services, holidays, Passover, whatever. That's not Passover, that's more a personal thing that you have at your own house. But, you know, the Feast of Purim, Rosh Hashanah, whatever, they'd all get together and have their religious meetings in their homes. Technically, you could argue that the Franklin House at one point in time was San Diego's unofficial synagogue. Because they had the meeting in that room. And the thing that really blows my mind about that is you needed at least 10 people to have that service. When Reiner came in and physically accosted Moses, they couldn't have the meeting anymore because they were minus one person. And that's why Franklin was incensed. So not only was Reiner violating Moses Manasseh's religious freedom, but everyone in that room. And all for, and you couldn't wait until tomorrow. it had to be today. And what cracks up, and Moses basically said, I ain't talking. Until Sunday. Oh, Sunday. Okay, yeah, I saw him. and that was it. He wasn't jailed. He wasn't fined. And this is because basically everyone knew everyone else, and they were all buds. You really didn't want to PO anyone because who knows? I'm not going to go to your store anymore. I'm sorry. So any other? We all know what dry goods are. Okay, because we try to explain it to the kids. It's stuff that ain't wet. Sir?
Were there enough children to have schools?
Yes, there was the Old Town Schoolhouse, 1869, on Mason Street. I even taught there for a while. Not back then. And yeah, I lived young from age. And it was a whole mixture. It would have been Jewish, it would have been Christian, it would have been Catholic. It's an old joke. Someone asked, I think it was one of my family who were from Texas, Oklahoma. They asked me if I was a Christian. When I asked for my wife's hand in marriage, and they asked me if I was a Christian, I go, no, I'm Catholic. No, you'll understand. It's a whole different. It's a whole different mindset. Just a whole different mindset. Where I can punch you in the face and go down and confess my sins and everything's fine. Yeah, my wife can't understand that. She just can't understand it. I go, just go with the flow. Anyone else? Stump the jump. Ma'am.
When was the Old Town Park established?
1968, 69. And that's a whole story in itself. Because we got Old Town in exchange for the city got Mission Bay. Mission Bay used to be a state park, and for whatever reason, the California State Parks, in its wisdom, looked at Old Town and said, I don't know, maybe we should think about a physical park as opposed to a bunch of swampland. Plus, the city of San Diego was pressuring them and say, you know, we can make a lot more money by building hotels, resorts. There are communities being built in Claremont and whatever, and everyone and their mother is going to get a ski boat. So think of the local taxes that we can raise when people buy their cars and trucks that tow their ski boats and their coolers and their barbecue stuff and whatever, and go down to Mission Bay Park as opposed to the state parks owning it, and they would go, oh, we're not going to do anything. We're not into the hotel motel business. So, one last question?
Yeah.